Hello and welcome to this Track Wrestling help video. Here at Track Wrestling, we're committed to helping our tournament directors run great events. In this video, we're going to go over how you would live score a dual tournament. So the first thing that you'll want to do is log into your event as an administrator. You can then navigate to the operating menu and to electronic bouts. One thing to note when doing so is you do have to have a tournament worker added to be able to live score a match on Track Wrestling. You can do that by going to the left menu, users, and then tournament workers to set up one of those accounts. From there, we have the question here that prompts us if we're using TrackCast or running on a Track Wrestling score clock. If we were doing either one of those, we would need to use the downloaded version of our controller. It will give you the download here if you select yes, and then you can install that on your computer and go through the steps there. For this example, we're going to go ahead and just say we're scoring this directly online. From there, you have the ability to select your wrestling style, and then you can open up the controller. I'm not going to dive too deeply into the settings in this video, but if you were utilizing the downloaded controller for either TrackCast or for a score clock, you would need to know a little bit about those, so we'll do a quick overview. The first thing here is the settings page. You'll notice under server location, that should almost always be trackwrestling.com, but in this case, since we're running an event on the staging site, it is the staging server. You do have the options in the drop down here to change that should you need to. If you were running on a local server, you could just put the IP address of your local server directly in there. If we were using that downloaded version and had a clock connected, we could select the clock IP. In this case, we're not, but that is where that setting is if you were utilizing it. If you selected the wrong style and needed to adjust what style of wrestling you were using, you can do that from the style drop down. If we were doing a college match, you have the ability to separate riding time or no. If you have it set to yes, the riding time would need to be started independently. If you have it set to no, it will be tied in with the scoring. So as soon as we click takedown, it would begin the riding time for that wrestler. As soon as we would click either reversal or escape, it would either start the riding time for the opposing wrestler or it would stop the riding time depending on which situation it was. Clock decimal time is just a preference of whether you want those fractional seconds to show. And then if you were running on a tablet or an iPad, you could choose yes to use the virtual keyboard. If you were running on the downloaded controller, you would need to go into the events page here and search for your event and log in with your tournament worker username and password. Since we're running online, it already has us signed in to this event, so we're just going to go to the matches page. This is your main landing page that you'll use for navigating your duel. If we had mats assigned, it would show up next to the duel name here. The silver is which chart or which bracket we're looking at, and then it shows the two teams. So I have Team E versus Team C here. If we had some duels completed, they would show up in green, and we would know that those had already been wrestled. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up this match. This is your main page that you'll use to navigate through the duel that you are wrestling. One thing I want to point out here is the starting rate toggle. You have the ability to choose your starting weight, and then it will reorder the rest of the weight classes sequentially, so you don't have to keep track of that or click back and forth on the page. We are going to go ahead and click into the 104 match since that's where we're going to start. It will guess the right wrestler that you have for each team, but you do have the ability to change these in these drop-down menus. In this case, we're going to go ahead and update this to Joseph and click Save and Continue. From here, we have the ability to go ahead and start the match either by clicking the Start button or using the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard, and we'll go ahead and do that. A couple things to note here is you have the ability to use practice mode if you were wanting to have your tournament workers go through how to score a match before a tournament. I always give them the opportunity to do that while we're still getting set up. When you're in practice mode, the results and the scores that you click in will not actually save, so they don't actually impact the tournament. It's just a way for people to get comfortable navigating the menus and scoring the match. When it is in practice mode, you do see that big and flashing up here at the top. If you want to change back to live mode, you just click on practice, type in live, and then you'll see that you're back in live mode here. It does automatically assign a color to the wrestlers, but you do have the ability to change that from the drop-down menu here. The periods should also, the position should also be correct based off what has been scored into the match, but you do have the ability to adjust those if for whatever reason that's incorrect so that you have the right options in the scoring menu. We'll go ahead and say that Mitch got a takedown. You'll see his position update to the top, and then you'll see that it does note that here in the match summary. If we happen to click that for the wrong wrestler, we can click on that instance, and we have the ability to delete it if it was in error. One thing I do want to mention is if you click delete all, that will remove everything that has been saved for the match so far. So always click delete, never delete all, because that will reset your entire match. If we had just clicked it for the wrong wrestler and we didn't need to delete it, but we needed to, let's say, switch that takedown to Joseph, we can click on switch, and that will just flip the colors of that, and you'll see that the positions automatically update as well. If we needed to change it, let's say instead of a takedown, that was a stalling call, you could change it and you'll see that the time still stays correct, but it will go ahead and update it on the summary here. So that is the end of the first period. You'll see that we do have this little icon here that notes that that stall call was made, so that'll keep track of that for you for the rest of the match. When changing to the next period, I would always recommend navigating using these arrows instead of going directly through the drop-down menu here. The reason for that is that gives you the ability to keep track of wrestler choice. So in this case, we'll go ahead and say red defers, and then green chose bottom. You'll see that green is already on the bottom here in the positions. We already have the right menus there. And then when we advance to the next period, that will be tracked and we won't have to keep track of that information. So that will make your life easier if you use it that way. We'll go ahead and start the time here. And we'll say that there was some blood time that started. In order to start that, you can just click on the start button. Whatever clock is big is the predominant clock. So that is what is running at the time. If you were connected to a track wrestling score clock, that would be the one that is showing on the scoreboard itself. Whenever you want to change back to another clock, we can go ahead and stop the blood time. You just click set, and then that will reset that to your predominant clock. If we needed to make an adjustment to the time, we can either click up and down if it was just a couple seconds off, or you have the ability to type in what you would want it to be. Let's say we want to change this back to 54 seconds. We can click set there, and it will save that time adjustment. We'll go ahead and give another stalling to the red wrestler, and you'll notice that that goes ahead and that gives the penalty point to his opponent. That's not something if you are using the buttons here that you have to assign separately. That is also a reason why I would always recommend selecting what actually happens in the match using the words here as opposed to the plus or minus points, just because that gives a clear summary of what's happened in the match and no one has any question about where that point came from or what happened there. I do also want to point out the summary page here, which will take you to a summary of your score sheet. If the officials or the coaches had any questions about the match or were challenging something, you'd have the ability to pull up the summary page and just quickly see everything that's transpired in the match so far. Then to go back to the match, you can just click on match and it should have everything pulled up right where you were. We'll go ahead and start the time again, and we'll give the green wrestler a reversal. At the end of your match, you will always want to go to the results page here to save that result. Otherwise, that match just is locally on your computer and it doesn't sync back to the administrative side of the event. It's very, very essential to always save the results as matches finish. The computer will do its best to guess the right wrestler who won, looking at all of the information that is entered. In this case, since we have clicked result before the match was completed, it's going to assume it was a fall. If it was an injury default or anything else, we could go ahead and change that here on this drop-down menu. Or let's say if Mitch had happened to get a defensive pin, we can update the wrestler just by clicking on the name. You'll always want to double check that the points, the winner, and the score type are correct. Again, 9 times out of 10, it's going to guess it correctly. If we had gone all the way to the third period, it would come up with a decision in Joseph's favor because he does have the majority of the points at this point. However, you always want to verify that to make sure that the correct winners are saved. So we'll go ahead and save this match. We'll say that Mitch did get that defensive pin and was the winner of this match. And then we can go ahead and start our next match. You'll see that the team scores populate here as each weight class is done. So you have a total at the bottom, and then it shows for each weight class what team points were scored. If we needed to make a team point adjustment for whatever reason, let's say there was an unsportsmanlike conduct or another penalty, you can click on adjust team points from here, select the team that you need to adjust. We're going to take it from E. We'll do -1, and we'll do unsportsmanlike on the coach, just so that there's a reason that is noted if there were any questions about why that deduction was added. You'll see that added here at the bottom, and you'll see that adjustment from the total tally of points. To start the next match, you go through the same process, just clicking into the next weight, selecting your wrestlers, and then you're ready to begin. If you have any questions about how to score your dual tournament on Track Wrestling or anything else regarding your event, you can always go to the support tab in the upper right hand corner. That will put you in touch with our help resources as well as our support team, who are glad to answer any questions you may have. Best of luck with your dual event, and thank you for watching this Track Wrestling help video.